Greetings everyone, this is Lakshmi Lotus. Now I will continue with part 2 on the series about dragons. Dragon species really do exist, and they exist right here on planet Earth, and they also have their other planets in which they live upon. And there are many species of dragons. So now in this video I'm going to speak about different people's experiences with these dragons. So there was a question. Do Chinese people believe that dragons are real? Yes, some of them believe Chinese dragons are real creatures living on Earth. The first guy I know who believes the existence of dragons is my PC teacher from the elementary school. One day he told us a story in class. He said when he was 6 or 7 years old, he once played with another kid in the countryside. While they were playing, suddenly his friend cried he saw a dragon in the sky. My teacher looked up, really saw that dragon, a white one, floating in the sky, heading toward a mountain and disappeared. He emphasized that he vividly saw the dragon by using the word, trying to convince us that he was not crazy. Years later, I read lots of statements on the internet describing how people had seen dragons when they were kids. Usually they claimed they saw dragons in countrysides, either flying in the sky or floating near to them. There was heavy rain or strong wind when they saw the dragons, and a few of them saw dragons on sunny days, like my PC teacher did. They said these dragons looked like flying snakes. That's exactly what they would look like. So these dragons, a lot of them don't have wings, but they just fly in the sky like that. They have bodies that look like snakes. And it is very common that the dragons would allow children to see them, because they don't allow everyone to see them. So not everyone's going to be like, you can't demand and say, well, if dragons really do exist, then why don't I see them? Yeah, well, God also exists, and you can't see God. You don't have the eyes to see, that's why. There are things which exist that can go within different dimensions so as to protect themselves, to be invisible to your eyes so you don't see them. And these dragon species can go into these different dimensions, and they can come into our dimension for visibility. And sometimes they allow children just for inspiration to see them. And usually these are the good dragons that are wishing well for human beings. They'll allow children to take a brief notice of them in the skies. And they are flying around in our skies all the time, and people just don't even see them. People are not seeing them. But they're currently, as today, flying in our skies, and the question would be, which countries are they flying in? Many countries, not just China. Many countries. Dragons are all over the world. They are within the earth, and they live in the waters, some of them, but some of them fly in the sky. And so, yeah, I'm going to continue now. So, there are several dragon dropping events during the 20th century, and the most famous one is the Yingkou dragon dropping in 1934. At the start of July 1934 in Yingkou, locals saw a living dragon. It couldn't fly or move, so locals built a shelter for it and poured water on its body. From legends, dragons are creatures related to water, so the temperature in July was too hot for it. Several days later, there was a rainstorm, and the next day the dragon disappeared. On 28th July, the dragon reappeared and dropped again. It overturned 3 boats, and a stopped train wrecked a factory house invented by Japanese and eventually caused 9 people dead. This dragon then swam into reeds, howling like a cow. After 11 days, people found its body among the reeds, and policemen took the body to West Wharf to show the public. That's how the newspaper took the above photo. At last, the police station gave the skeleton to a school. However, it got lost during the later wartime. This event is so famous that 2 Chinese national channels made documentaries about it, trying to explain what the creature is. You know, they are national channels, so dragon is not an answer for them. Ma Qiaoqin, a former editor of Shanghai Lexicographical Publishing House, has also investigated the dragon dropping event that happened in 1944 and finally published a book called Dragon, an Unknown Creature. He claims that dragons really exist. They are just animals that look like snakes but can fly. He can't explain why they can fly. Right, because just like there's human beings that can fly, and you can't explain that either. Modern science does not explain many of the things that really take place, and that is just the way it is. So I said in my last video, there's human being species that fly from one planet to another without any spacecraft. I don't know how to explain these dragon dropping events, but for witnesses on the internet, I kind of think that they have experienced some kind of children's collective hallucination. So the author here writing this is not in full convinced or belief that dragons do exist. And it's unfortunate that people think that dragons are just a myth, because they're not. They're real creatures. So I think I will stop there on that one. Now, there's just another piece of information that does talk a little more about the history of dragons in China. My focus here in my dragon series is focusing more on the Chinese culture about dragons, because it is the Chinese culture in the history of it that fully was aware and knew that the dragon species exists. And it seems that the other cultures are not as much, don't have as much evidence, or so that's mostly my focus here. So Chinese dragon, how it became legendary in China. So here we go. So when you think of China and its mythology, again I put that in quotes because it's not a myth, one of the first creatures that spring to mind is the Chinese dragon. This legendary creature is without a doubt one of the most well-known aspects of Chinese culture abroad. But what do you really know about the Chinese dragon, aside from that it's a pretty cool Chinese zodiac sign and a popular choice for a tattoo? Do you know what a Chinese dragon means and symbolizes? No? Then you've come to the right place. So, this is all about the essential things to know about the Chinese dragon, what it looks like, what they have, what link they have with human beings, and their role in Chinese society. Okay, so what is a Chinese dragon? You may have heard that Chinese people are fond of dragons, but you may wonder what a Chinese dragon looks like, since they are quite different from the Western dragon. So here is a description, physical aspect. In stories, a Chinese dragon can be composed of many different animal parts. Still, it's more commonly depicted as having the tail of a fish, the scales of a carp, the neck of a snake, the belly of a clam, the head of a camel, the claws of an eagle, the paws of a tiger, the ears of a cow, the eyes of a demon, the beard of a goat, and the horn of a stag. So actually, this description is slightly different from the other description in the fact that this one's saying the head of a camel, the other one said the head of a lion and the face of a camel. So a little different description there. So Chinese dragons can be of many colors. They can be blue, yellow, black, white, or red, depending on the dynasty that was ruling. The official Chinese dragon color varied. Dragons under the Han and Qin dynasty. Under the Han dynasty, for instance, the Chinese dragon symbolizing the emperor, who was viewed as a god at the time, was turquoise. This turquoise Chinese dragon also symbolized the fifth element in the Chinese five elements, the sun, the east, and the west. Han dynasty aside, it was mostly the yellow Chinese dragon chosen by the emperors as their symbol. This was particularly the case during the Qing dynasty from 1644 to 1912 AD. The Qing's Emperor Yuan, in fact, was said to be the offspring of his mother's telepathic communications with a mystical Chinese dragon, not unlike the first emperor of China, and claimed that the most powerful Chinese dragon was yellow. Behavior. Chinese dragons are given many powers in Chinese folklore. They are said to control thunder, floods, and rain, unlike the Western dragon, rumored to be evil and dangerous. The Chinese dragon is said to be kind and noble. He symbolizes divinity, goodness, excellence, power, and energy. Dragons are also very smart. They are not to be afraid of, but are mainly considered as protectors that keep people from harm. Chinese dragons typically live in heaven or worshipped places. And this describes 9 Chinese dragons, whereas my previous video, it described 14. So let's see what the 9 ones are. Well, since I've already described the 14 dragons, I'm going to skip over this 9. 7, 8, finally the 9th. Okay, so the 9 dragon often used in architecture in China. The 9 Chinese dragons are a symbol you'll often run into in China, and it's often used in architecture. For instance, you can check the 9 dragon wall in Beijing. So, not all sources agree on which were the 9 legendary dragons. Sometimes you'll find others listed, and you may run into at least 14 different dragons in stories. And depending on the regions of China, different dragons can be depicted in the local folklore. Alright, so now for understanding its origins. In ancient China, the beliefs started with the rise of the great dynasties, the relationship between Chinese people and Chinese dragons. Dragons have always been related to people since Chinese beliefs are firm. Let's see how they created this magical relationship and why the dragon is such an important cultural symbol in China. Descendants of Chinese dragons. It's because they are descendants of these dragons. So, according to legends and stories, Chinese people used to believe they descend from dragons. So, how is this possible? So, where does the Chinese dragon come from? Stories state that a long time ago, around 2500 BC, tribes fought each other to gain more lands in ancient China. The so-called Yellow Emperor Huangdi allied with another tribe leader named Yangdi to gain an edge in the battle. Yangdi was said to be born thanks to his mother's telepathic communications with a powerful dragon. So the story goes that powerful dragon helped him through his quests, and thanks to the dragon's help, both Huangdi and Yangdi defeated their common enemy, the people led by Qiyu during the Battle of Zulu. As Huangdi's and Yangdi's tribes united, they picked a dragon as the symbol for their newly formed tribe's banner. Since those prehistoric times, many Chinese people have considered themselves Huangdi and Yangdi's descendants, and therefore the descendants of dragons. In Chinese, people say Yan Wan Zhishun, descendants of Huangdi and Yangdi. There is also a well-known song in China that deals with Long de Chuanren, Chuanren, the descendants of the Chinese dragon. From tribes to emperors. The Chinese dragon symbol can be traced back to ancient China. As civilization evolved and tribes gave way to dynasties in China, the dragon's importance grew even more. Starting in the Han Dynasty, emperors started considering themselves as dragons. It all started with Liu Bang, who later on became the first emperor of the Han Dynasty. And we talked about this story in the previous video, so I'm going to bypass that. So basically, because of this, they claimed they were Chinese dragons' sons too, and that dragon blood was running through their veins. So that was from that emperor. Then from then on, everything in the emperor's suite was embossed with Chinese dragons, from clothes to furniture. For example, only the emperor was allowed to wear a dragon symbol on the clothes. Yes, and we talked about that before. As explained before, emperors also chose their dragon's color to show their power. The color they choose for their dragon became the most important color in society, and no one else was allowed to wear that color or they were punished. Okay, so you can see how it came to be that they were descendants of the dragons. They also now they have like the Chinese dragon dance where they celebrate this. The Chinese New Year also celebrates the dragon with various symbols. They have special festivals in China, like the Dragon Boat Festival. And it's also in the zodiac signs that it is the Chinese dragon is the 5th sign in the Chinese zodiac. And actually, people in China love to have a boy born during the dragon year, as they say he will be lucky in life. So, alright, well, I'm going to stop there as a part 2. And I'm going to continue on with this dragon series and give more and more information about this truly real existent species of life. It's not mythology, it's not fairy tale. And so I think it's important for people to recognize the real existence of dragons. So thanks for listening, everyone, and you all have a great day.